Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream, and thank you so much for tuning in for another show. Despite the ceasefire in Gaza, the very fragile ceasefire in Gaza that is being broken by the Israeli terror forces every several days and sometimes on a daily basis, Netanyahu did not close the other fronts that he wanted to use as leverage to continue this barbarism on a regional scale and in a global scale as well. He continued the attacks in Lebanon and he increased the attacks in Lebanon too. He kills people regularly. And now, however, we have something very interesting, a very interesting development. It's none other than the Lebanese president now saying that the army needs to confront Israel. Joseph Aoun, the Lebanese president, instructing the Lebanese army to confront Israeli incursions. Hezbollah praising the stance too. So why is he saying that now? Well, yesterday they had an attack in which they killed one member of the civil authority in one of the areas, so an employee of the state technically. I mean, they've done that before. They killed Lebanese soldiers, they killed Lebanese people, civilians, healthcare staff, and journalists as well, during the time where it was in flames between the Lebanese resistance and the Israeli genocidal entity. What's the shift now, however, with the president? This is the president whose government was talking about disarming the Lebanese resistance under the pressure of Tom Barak, the envoy of the United States administration to the Levant area, primarily Lebanon and Syria, and he's based in Turkey too. Well, the repeated Israeli aggression, the total lack of respect of Israel to the agreements that they had with Lebanon, constant breaches of the ceasefire, now it appears that they've had enough. He instructed the Lebanese army to confront Israel to prevent them from any incursions after they had an incursion in one of the villages in South Lebanon, saying that it's not enough to say and ask the guarantors to stop the Israeli incursions, and the Lebanese army needs to resist them. He said tasaddi in Arabic. Tasaddi means confront, to resist, tackle, stop. So are we going to see the Lebanese army beginning to fight with Israel? I mean, if you ask me personally, my instinct is I'll believe it when I see it. I mean, I'll believe it when an Israeli soldier is shot, when there are casualties from the Israeli terror forces side. That's my instinct. However, if we want to look through it from a general, broader thing, well, the statement is new. That's number one. However, we did not have, being realistic here, the Lebanese army targeting Israel. Firstly, you're talking about 80 to 90,000 people. They're not equipped with what a normal army needs to be equipped with. Their equipment is for internal policing. And as a matter of fact, some of Lebanon's worst adversaries confirmed that, the Lebanese army is there to police Lebanon and to disarm the Lebanese resistance. But there's been a year now almost since the ceasefire took effect with Lebanon. The Lebanese government is getting more tired now with this Israeli nonsense, of course, totally backed by the United States administration. Saying that, however, the American administration has a very good relationship with the Lebanese army. Who's benefiting from this? Hezbollah are benefiting from this. How? Well, Hezbollah, if you recall, when Al-Aqsa flood started, Hezbollah on the 8th of October were the first front to participate as a supporting front. They did not declare an all-out war. They said supporting front, limited actions against Israel, and the purpose behind it was clarified clearly at the time by the Secretary General of Hezbollah, the late Secretary General of Hezbollah at the time, Hassan Nasrallah, who said that we are there to support the Palestinian resistance and the Palestinian population in Gaza, and also extract some of these forces to the north so they don't use all of them in the south. And they did. Over 30% of the Israeli ground troops were positioned in the north at one point. At one point it went up, especially after certain de-escalations in Gaza. The Israeli Air Force, the Israeli resources. However, it reached the peak of a war, if not like an all-out war, but it reached a level of a proper war between the Lebanese resistance and Israel, when Benjamin Netanyahu started to face pressure and decided that he needs to escalate against Lebanon. Then we had a ceasefire. Ever since then, the talks were about disarming the Lebanese resistance to the south of the Litani River. However, Hezbollah said that's not going to happen. As a matter of fact, when the Lebanese government issued a statement to confirm the disarmament, or that the state will disarm the Lebanese resistance, Hezbollah told them we're going to treat it as if it never happened. And it's not going to happen because they knew where it was coming from. It wasn't coming as a Lebanese consensus move. It wasn't coming as an internal concern. It was coming as a demand from the Trump administration. In particular, of course, Tom Barak and the American ambassador in Lebanon. You need to disarm. Why disarm? So that no one can confront Israel. At the end of the day, it was the Lebanese resistance who liberated the Lebanese lands following the Israeli invasions in 1982 and in other years as well. And it was the Lebanese resistance that posed a deterrence for Israel and actually prevented them from more occupation when the war was at its peak. Now that this tone has shifted from the Lebanese government, the main side benefiting here is Hezbollah. Hezbollah, from their perspective, they released a statement. They said that they condemn the Zionist crime in the town of Blida and holds Washington responsible. Washington responsible, well, number one, because they should be guaranteeing a ceasefire and taming the Zionist murderers. But instead, they've had a side agreement with Israel that allows them to get away with murder, even if that isn't embedded in the original ceasefire agreement, similar to what they're doing now in Gaza. You know, that the side agreement that they always have. And they said, okay, you're responsible, and we condemn this attack. But they also said that they welcome the response coming from the Lebanese president. Hezbollah commended the president's directive to the Lebanese army to confront Israeli incursions, calling for the army to be provided with all necessary resources to bolster its defensive capabilities and to receive the political backing it needs to confront this enemy. Okay, how is that exactly going to happen? The Lebanese army isn't really well equipped to do hardly anything with Israel. And the Americans know that very well. The Israelis know that very well. And before that, the equation was, well, the Lebanese resistance has this deterrence against Israel, and the Lebanese army is a national army. Now, the Lebanese army, by the way, it was offered power. It was offered weapons. Do you know who offered them to the Lebanese army? Iran, the same main backer of Hezbollah. They told them, we'll arm you, no problem. But they said, no, we can't, because if they're viewed as, an army being armed by Iran, then, well, that's not going to please the arrogant powers, of course, that are there to serve Israel with the level of infiltration of Zionism in these countries, who have a relationship with Lebanon. Are we going to see something else now? Well, the statements are there. It was an order given to the Lebanese army. There could be something here in coordination with the American side to try and take Israel a step back. How likely is that to succeed? Well, we're going to have to see. And like I said, we'll believe it when we see it. At the end of the day, it was Israel killing Lebanese. In the past year, we didn't see any Israeli being killed from any attacks coming from Lebanon, whether from the Lebanese resistance or the Lebanese army. And from a resistance perspective, it's because they were adhering to an agreement that they had entered. Unlike, of course, the Israeli side that didn't honor any agreement. And then they actually went and said that, oh, no, we have a side agreement with the American administration. We can do whatever we want. That's on the Lebanese front. Now, add to that the fact that Ansarullah in Yemen said that if Israel, well, they warned Israel from continuing the breaches in Lebanon in somewhat of a threat that if this opens again, well, our front will be active again. They also said they were monitoring the ceasefire in Gaza very closely. Clearly, they're in high coordination levels, both with Gaza and Lebanon too. That might open as well. And then if that opens, well, Hezbollah will have the full legitimacy. No one's going to be talking about disarming anyone here. Helton Barak himself admitted that Israel makes it difficult for us to continue with any plans to disarm the Lebanese resistance because they're attacking everyone. Well, of course they are, just as they have been for this whole time. And that's why there is something called resistance in that area. Resistance to what? Resistance to constant oppression and terrorism from this entity that believes that everyone should be subjugated to it and to them. That's not the case with the people of the region. No, you don't have people who obey the occupier. And they said, no, if you're not going to give us our rights, we're going to resist. And now, with Israel's strategic stupidity, led by its arrogance, by the way, they're leading the Lebanese state, the same country that, or the same state or government that they were relying on to disarm Hezbollah, to take a resisting position. That's in essence an order to resist an Israeli incursion. But again, we will believe it when we see it. So next time there's an Israeli invasion, we'll see what happens, and then things will go from there. But what's for sure is this is another step going to the side of the Lebanese resistance, proving to an extent that their patience in this period is effective or has been effective, because these moves are proving their position to be the right position. Now, Israel, on the other hand, if it does go ahead with the agreements that are there and starts attacking, it faces a confrontation that will be totally legitimate and has been, by the way, for the past, not just a year or two, by the way, for the past decades. Israel breached the agreement that they had with Lebanon in 2006 regularly. Reports tens of thousands of times, whether by invading the Lebanese airspace or an attack here or an attack there or whatever it is. So if they do conduct an attack, should they face resistance from the Lebanese army, then that's an attack on the state of Lebanon. You're talking about not an attack against a group in Lebanon. No, it's an attack on the state of Lebanon. Interesting things happening on that front in Lebanon. Moving on to the next thing that I wanted to talk to you about. You know, the ceasefire in Gaza, the fragile ceasefire, the ceasefire with the constant Zionist breaches, constant Zionist barbarism against the civilians, constant Zionist killing of infants and people. it has been fragile, but it's going. And one of the main things that they're talking about now is phase 2. Now we're in phase 1. What's going to happen in phase 2? Where is Israel going to withdraw to? And which forces are going to be in Gaza? Every day we hear new names, and multiple countries showed their willingness to. As a matter of fact, the American administration is speaking with more countries now who would be interested in participating in Gaza. But there's a problem. There's a problem, and that problem is these forces are not really convinced by the recipe that's being given to them. International Stabilization Force, ambiguity and obstacles, one of the articles here stated. Why? Because according to them and according to the countries that would be involved in this International Stabilization Force, they don't know exactly what they're going to do. You see, the Israeli side is saying, yeah, we're going to disarm Hamas, and the Israelis saying we're going to disarm Hamas, and their mission is to disarm them and provide security, provide this, provide that. And Israel is having certain conditions on who's going to participate or not. The American side, however, had a different agreement with the Arab countries and Muslim countries too, by saying that this is a temporary force. Their goal is not going to be to necessarily disarm the Palestinian resistance, but rather pave the way for the next phase. And they're talking about a Palestinian state in the 1967 borders, the only thing that the Palestinian resistance would consider a reason or a valid reason to disarm. And in that case, it wouldn't be disarming, it would be handing the resistance arms to the Palestinian state, to the independent, sovereign Palestinian state, not a proxy state, not a puppet state, not a state that doesn't have sovereignty, not a state that doesn't have its own decision. Of course, that would be the natural thing, merge into the country. But Israel has other ideas that the Trump administration has been entertaining to an extent. The only thing that they were criticizing was the Israeli plans or moves, especially the initial vote in the Israeli Knesset to go and annex the West Bank. Trump, J.D. Vance, they said that's not going to happen. And there is some power battle here, especially because of the limited leverage that Donald Trump has now with Benjamin Netanyahu and his offer or actual move to grant him amnesty internally. All of the talk about Benjamin Netanyahu being granted amnesty in Israel or a plea deal happened due to the proposals of Donald Trump. As a matter of fact, he stated that when he had his speech in the Israeli Knesset. And now, and again, that's another evidence that there's some sort of a power game here, power battle. Benjamin Netanyahu went to this base, this HQ in Kiryat Gat in South Israel, where the United States is supposed to be running the show to an extent on what happens in Gaza. They said that we're stopping certain attacks, they prevented Israel from doing certain things, and also recently Israel even made a threat to crunch into territories behind the yellow line, going back to square one, and now they said these plans are called off until further notice. Why? Because there was an American request from us not to continue with this plan. Clearly, there's some sort of a battle there. Now, how did Netanyahu try and counter the battle or the image of Israel being an American proxy? Because that's how in Israel they're joking now, oh, you're a proxy of Donald Trump. There was even a video published in the Israeli television of Trump as an emperor, and Benjamin Netanyahu was an obedient little slave. And it's going ahead. Not that this reflects the true picture here at the end of the day, especially with what the Trump administration granted Israel so far and being fully participant in the genocide in Gaza. But there's something here. Netanyahu went down to that HQ and he said that, oh yeah, along the lines of, we're glad that our partners are here, of course, to monitor the situation and help us continue. Oh, really? Is that supposed to be like a convincing argument that our partners are here? What kind of an independent state brings foreign powers to come and manage a battle or a genocide, to be more specific, or stop certain operations of the Israeli army? What kind of an independent nation does that? In effect, now, what we do have is international forces in Israel and no international forces in Gaza. That's the reality. And Netanyahu was very worried about that. And people in the Israeli press were asking him, listen, the Trump administration also said there's no annexation of the West Bank. What's happening here? You said the Knesset passed this initial motion. Of course, it's not an obligation to continue with it. Most likely it's going to be rejected in the second vote that will have a bigger majority against. But it was more symbolic. However, he said that no, we're partners, and we're not a proxy. We're not a proxy state, and we're not a puppet state for the United States administration. So because of this lack of clarity, that according to multiple sources within the United States and also in the mediating countries too, that was the only formula that would go into it, to the ceasefire. There was no other formula that all parties could agree upon. There was no way that both sides, or primarily the Israeli side, most of the criticism, all of the criticism actually was against Israel, apart from the American administration, because they're complicit at the end of the day. They said that there's no way that we're going to reach an agreement that would declare an ending of the war. The only way we can do it is find this initial move, this initial document, so that we can push the two sides to start with the ceasefire agreement. Later on, we build upon that, because that's better than what we have at the moment. That was the approach. That's why we also have these breaches, but undeniably also because the lack of a proper position from the primarily Arab countries backing for the Palestinian side. Again, not to undermine the efforts, not to undermine the actual work. They have indeed put in a lot of efforts to try and reach the ceasefire, and some of them sacrificed, and some of them were threatened, some of them fell under a lot of pressure. However, still, this went on for 2 years, and had there been a better position, we could have potentially had an even better ceasefire with no Israeli breaches, let alone the fact that this genocide could have been stopped. That option was there. Now, moving on, next, the Israeli side, they're still preparing. So we're talking about a country that, they're entering a ceasefire agreement. They haven't declared the ending of the war. Really and truly, one of the primary reasons why Israel entered this ceasefire agreement is the fact that they were humiliated militarily, and they did not have sufficient numbers for their terrorist army to continue the operations inside of Gaza. Hence why they're doing what? They are still trying to recruit the members of the Haredi community inside of Israel to go and join the army, because over 60% weren't following conscription orders. But that's not really going very well. These were some of the latest protests of the Haredi Orthodox community in Israel. Thousands, if not tens of thousands, in the streets of occupied Palestine, saying, no, we're not going to the army, we refuse conscription. That, and there were also clashes as well. Let's have a look at this here. Clashes, problems, again, thousands, not tens of thousands actually going out and protesting. Why? Because Israel is still trying to force conscription on the people. Why are they still trying to force conscription on the people? Because they have plans, and these plans did not end with this pause, with this very fragile ceasefire agreement. If they had enough people to continue the genocide on a full scale, they would have continued. Don't think that they're all of a sudden they switched and became, they are still the same nation, rooted with evil and with terror and with everything that you can think of and saw in the past 2 years. That's still the same country. Nothing changed. And no amount of propaganda and social media buying and people pretending to be free speech advocates and alternative media pretending, and in reality are playing nothing but a dirty role for global Zionism, Zionist mouthpieces. No amount is going to help you. Nothing is going to help you. And they're still proving to the whole world their true nature. They're still proving that we are an entity of terror. We are war criminals, because even when we have a de-escalation, we continue to kill infants. We continue to maim infants. Like what they've done just a couple of days ago. They staged this attack in an area where they are present in, that's not under the Palestinian resistance control directly. And what do they do as a response? They start butchering children. They start killing them left, right, and center. If they had all of those numbers, they would have continued. They wouldn't have stopped. Because they did face certain pressure at one point, or in multiple points in the 2 years of genocide, but they did not stop because they still had capacity. Although the military was telling the political leadership and political echelon, don't, because we're getting exhausted. Let's not forget that the Israeli army's ground troops went to a third of its size that it was 2 decades ago. So we already had an incapable ground army. They were already incapable, let alone untrained, by the way, because they weren't fighting in urban warfare in Gaza. They were fighting in destruction warfare in Gaza. The same destruction that they caused that later flipped against them and to the favor of the Palestinian resistance, because they know their surroundings, they know their geography, they know their ins and outs, and it made it much more difficult for any Israeli forces on the ground to target any of the Palestinian resistance fighters under all of this destruction. And these were the main things that I wanted to share with you in this live stream. I'll open the space up for some participation from the community. Anyone, if you have any questions or comments, we'll go through them. And thank you so much, everyone, again, for tuning in for another live stream. Michael McIntyre, thank you so much, my friend, for your super. And Darkness 0615 as well. Thank you for that. Aini as well. Thank you so much, everyone who sent super thanks. We'll try and see if we can reach the beginning here. Alan, thank you so much as well. He said we might as well call of Israel ceasefires as breach fires. Yeah, absolutely. That is the case, because even when they had previous ceasefires with Gaza, let's not forget that, you know, the Zionist decontextualizing propaganda crew, they tell you the 7th of October and the 7th, and remember and remember and remember and remember and remember the 7th of October and the atrocities that they've done. And they don't tell you about the escalations and the Israeli crimes in 2021, in 2014, in 2012, in 2009 and 8 and before that, and the fact that they were under siege, the fact that they've been under occupation since 1967 in Gaza, the fact that all of them, if not most of them, this nice 73% were refugees way before the 7th of October. They don't tell you any of that. Everything propaganda. So absolutely, they've been constantly breaching, and they never stopped breaching. And despite the fact that there is an agreement going on, that doesn't mean they won't actually breach as well. And Glenn, thank you very much, my friend, for your super as well. MCM, I did not hear, did Mahmoud say anything about Turkey soldiers? Are they coming to Gaza? I didn't speak about it today, but I spoke previously about it. And what I mentioned was, well, at one point they were considered to be sending it. That's it. It's happening. And the American side clearly agreed to it. As a matter of fact, still the American administration to this day does not deny that there might be a chance of them going. And even if Israel disagrees, they did not rule out the presence of Turkish soldiers in Gaza. But Netanyahu has been confirming time after time that we will not allow Turkish forces in Gaza. Recently, they had a report saying Pakistan somehow. I'm not sure if it was like a media spin here to try and, mention the name Pakistan and then settle for Turkey too. However, it's still on the table. From an Israeli perspective, it isn't, but not everything happens based on the Israeli demands or the Israeli wishes. As a matter of fact, the whole ceasefire agreement didn't go ahead with what Israel wants, actually. And also, Michael McIntyre as well, thank you very much for your support. Let's go to the beginning of the chat, see what we have. And again, welcome everyone. Cisco, Lebanon has to do something about Israel. What? Israel isn't allowed to blow up anything at once? Oh, yeah. They want to be able to do that, but they don't want any repercussions. And the Lebanese side, they haven't been responding to anything for the past year. The interesting thing about this, by the way, is the fact that the Israeli media isn't saying anything about it. They're not saying that the Lebanese president said this and that, and they're not trying to make a fuss about it too much. However, that's something that Benjamin Netanyahu might capitalize on. So I wouldn't be surprised if Israel starts to try and tease Lebanon or try a certain invasion so that they can be attacked and they reach an all-out war. As a matter of fact, there was a statement from one of the figures in the Palestinian resistance who said that Israel is trying to drag us to respond so that we can go back to an all-out war. So from their perspective, it's a thin line between, well, having either this patience or not responding to not give them an excuse, and then literally letting them get away with everything that they've been doing for not only the past year, by the way. Again, the breaches against Lebanon have been going on for a very, very long time. Tens of thousands, confirmed and verified, by the way, by the United Nations as well. We're not talking about no, the UN confirmed them too. Bujar Mahmoud, the last Iranian operation destroyed several dozens of Israeli fighter jets alongside 200 pilots in their bases centers. I'm not entirely sure about the figure of 200 pilots in their bases and centers because we didn't have a confirmation of that. But what's for sure is they did target several Israeli fighter jets, in particular F-35s, by the way. They targeted their hangars in one of the main bases in the south of occupied Palestine. However, the number of Israeli casualties or people in certain figures, very difficult to find that out because Israel hides these numbers, like they hide the real number of casualties from their security forces in Gaza too. But what's for sure is there were some losses. I mean, even when Hezbollah targeted an Israeli head of the 8,200 unit, we haven't seen him since. There was just a ceremony to replace him and he wasn't present there. A lot of dodgy things. So that shows you that there was some sort of damage happening there. And Israel isn't sharing the whole information. Saying that, however, by the way, interestingly enough, the Israeli media had a couple of reports just a couple of months after the 12-day war with Iran, and they started to show the scale of damage that happened in Israel. I mean, of course, we showed it live at the time when Iran was attacking in those 12 days every day, but Israel started to publish even more information. Probably damage control, probably to kind of shift the narrative slightly because it was already seen. They didn't want to mention anything, but it was too much of a huge attack against them. And Netanyahu at the time was taken aback because it was humiliating for him. Dana Johnson, why is there a concept of chosen people like a master race? You see, that is the mother of all questions, that is, isn't it? I think that question needs to be addressed primarily to Zionist Christians who believe they are the chosen ones. And, of course, not all Christians whatsoever. And also, we need to understand them. It's coming out of their religious beliefs. It's coming out of religious texts that they have too, that they are the master race, they are the chosen ones, and that they can subjugate and kill every other or goy. That's their belief system. So that's why. Now, the funny thing is that there are others, apart from them, who, again, try and justify that. And their primary target, of course, is the Zionist Christian movement inside of the United States. And how do they do that? Of course, apart from the power that they have and the reach that they have and the money and control over media outlets that they're boasting about now. You know, a year ago, it was considered to be a conspiracy if you mentioned anything as such. And now we have the Israeli Prime Minister bragging about how important the purchase of TikTok is. Thank you for clarifying further and making our job easier for us. But some of these leaders, the leaders in the Christian Zionist community inside of the United States, you know, the multi-millionaires, these people, they are making a hell of a lot of money. Easy job, you know, you are either the vicar or the connection of the people to God. You know, they need to come through you, and whatever you say is accepted. The other day, what's his name? Hagee, if I pronounce that correctly, one of the most prominent figures in the evangelical community in the United States. Again, although even the evangelical community started to have differences in the past 2 years, whether we're talking about the younger generation or the older generation, but he was hell-bent on defending Israel as God's chosen ones, you know. That's where the brainwashing lies. And the problem with that is you're talking about people who believe that, as in, believe that religiously. So, one of the most difficult things to argue with people about is their religious beliefs. Go and argue with someone about, why are they, the chosen one? What is Israel even? Is it the state? Is it in its form? Is it everyone in it? Is it the people who came from multiple parts of the world? What is it exactly? See, if you start analyzing it, it makes sense. If you start seeing, then it makes sense. But for some people, no, whatever, the head of the religious community tells them, they agree to it. And of course, the Israelis are milking it till the last second, whether it's with money or with anything really. And they're trying really, really hard now with American Christians who are considered to be on the right side of the map, people who they consider to be in their pocket for a long time. And it's not really going very well. As a matter of fact, Israel's starting to show desperation by the ridiculous amounts of money that they spend. Reports that they were offering Charlie Kirk 150 million to Turning Point USA. They nurture and groom these people to try and pretend like, we are you and you are us and we are friends and we share the same interests and we are the protection against, these people. Of course, they'll push for the general thing they'll push for is, Islamophobia. They'll use a couple of people to talk about transgenderism and whatever it is, and hide the fact to an extent that the main or one and only goal is Israel and Zionism. And some of them, of course, will be atheists too, or pretend to be atheists, certain figures in the United States. But you know them when you hear them and what they say. Anyone on earth who has any level, as in 0.1% tolerance to Zionism, written off immediately. Anyone who has seen what happened in the past couple of years as well and still takes that position, listen, they're a minority. They try and play it bigger than what they actually are. But you know them from what they are. And the fact that they are showing any sort of sympathy or apologizing on behalf of or promoting, Zionism, that reveals everything. And in short, it's embedded in their belief system. That's why they do it that way. And that's why, they manipulate people from multiple countries as well. And thank you for that. It was from Dana Johnson. Let's go to take a couple of more of your questions, if we have any here. Bujar, also in reference to the Israeli attack on Iran, Iran revealed that no Israeli jet was involved in the attack, only Mossad drones from the inside. No air defense has been touched. RGC, we didn't buy S-400 because ours are far more advanced capabilities. The initial attack of Israel on Iran wasn't conducted by Israeli fighter jets invading Iranian airspace, but rather internal organizations working covertly there, belonging to the Israeli Mossad. But then that was accompanied by multiple strikes. The initial report said that they were carried out by Israeli fighter jets outside of Iranian airspace, sometimes above another country, and then they targeted these locations. In certain instances, however, there is reason to believe that Israel did invade Iranian airspace with either projectiles or drones or fighter jets. Why? Simply because we saw the Iranian air defense systems being active, and they were active against something, whether that was a drone, whether that was a projectile, or whether it was a fighter jet. But there would be reasons to believe why Israel wouldn't have wanted to invade the Iranian airspace, because they weren't entirely sure of their air defense capability, and the fact that Iran had many of these dummy batteries spread out all across of Iran, and they were still capable of conducting defensive measures against the Israeli attacks. All of that needs to be taken into consideration. And with their system, it's effective. It's effective. Covenantal soldier Christian Zionism is more of an oxymoron, like a Judeo-Christian values. They exchange the God of life with the God of manna and death. They care not of any life that God has granted. I must say that I agree to a large extent with that. I mean, I actually spoke about many Christians about this matter as well, and hopefully will be as well in the future too, because it's an important subject. Why? Because Israel builds its support from the United States primarily, and it needs to continuously justify it. And somehow the federal government, the United States, grants them endless power inside of the United States to a level where they undermine the whole country. I mean, you can argue that the American state isn't really, the United States of America isn't really sovereign. It doesn't really have full sovereignty, who's running the show. But yeah, and that problem, however, is increasing for Israel, because more people are criticizing. Like, even recently, there was this J.D. Vance was in this TPUSA again. And he was actually, let me share that with you. Let me share this video with you. Let's have a look.
Ethnic cleansing in Gaza. I'm just confused why this idea has come around, considering the fact that not only does their religion not agree with ours, but also openly supports the prosecution of ours.
Yeah, so let's say a few things about this. First of all, when the President of the United States says America first, that means that he pursues the interests of Americans first. That is our entire foreign policy. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to have alliances, that you're not going to work with other countries from time to time. And that is what the president believes, is that Israel, sometimes they have similar interests to the United States and we're going to work with them in that case. Sometimes they don't have similar interests to the United States. And this example, the most recent Gaza peace plan that all of us have been working on very hard for the past few weeks, the president of the United States could only get that peace deal done by actually being willing to apply leverage to the state of Israel. So when people say that Israel is somehow manipulating or controlling the president of the United States, they're not controlling this president of the United States, which is one of the reasons why we'd be able to have some of the success that we've had in the Middle East.
So they're trying. Listen, they're trying to convince the people, have more compelling arguments. Clearly, J.D. Vance and others as well, they've been hearing comments like this. And look at the crowd. Look at the people in TPUSA with these questions that they're asking. And although J.D. Vance is trying to be convincing in his argument, there is no denying about the level of infiltration. The level of infiltration is immense. At the end of the day, you can't argue that they are still operating freely inside of the United States of America without registering as a foreign lobby in America somehow. And, well, many of them are in the White House and in the Trump administration, Trump himself too, to a large degree, despite, again, any disagreements he may or may not have. He brags about being the most friendly president of Israel. So they're using new tactics now to try and have a better argument against the people who are asking the hard questions. That is something that's showing you that they're being pushed to the corner. And in essence, that could be one of the reasons why Donald Trump actually pushed more for a ceasefire agreement, so that, well, he can show Americans that, listen, I can actually do something, because it was getting ridiculous. Okay. Janice Jackson. The story of what happened to Charlie Kirk is so ludicrous that anyone with half a brain can see through it. Anyone spending millions of dollars trying to bury what we have seen already is futile. Everything was dodgy in the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Listen, the man was undeniably Zionist. He was pushing for total support of Israel. He was denying the fact that there was a genocide. But he also undeniably started to say certain things about the lobby and Israel and the right of Christians in the United States to criticize Israel, and he was questioning a lot of things. Then he received an invitation from Benjamin Netanyahu that he reportedly declined. Then he was saying that certain Jewish donors in the United States were ditching him. Then some of these donors, especially of TPUSA, were having limitations on who they want and who they don't want to be in these events, because again, they want to manipulate and control everything. And then you come to the event itself. The event itself, the thing that popped, was it a projectile? Was it a planted device? The people doing these military moves behind him, any person with a military background would know. Shoot, mail, but do you know what I mean? How quickly he was taken, the fact that they took many devices off the scene, the fact that he was taken away in a federal government vehicle, where is the body, all of that quick burial. Where is the investigation? Is the man who killed him the same man who we saw in the video? Did he carry the same weapon? So many questions. The fact that his security team was supposedly an Israeli security team, you know, the same country that brags about exploding pagers in civilians, right? Could they have planted something, that mic device? And to a level where Netanyahu had to come up and deny. Why did Netanyahu rush to deny? Oh, we didn't have any involvement.
You know, the ones who are saying that we're involved it's a ridiculous claim.
Why did he go ahead and start to deny? The evidence was so hard. And again, I'm not entirely sure why they even did it this way. Was it like to send a message to intimidate other people on the right side of the map or the conservative side of the map? Is it to tell people, look, we're going to kill you if you do that? Maybe. Then you have his wife, Erica, the daughter of a man reportedly involved in Raytheon, coming and cheerleading for Trump before, coming from a part of Eastern Europe, then having criminal charges there, something to do with potentially human trafficking and the crocodile tears in that event, you know. And I forgive him, you know, buying the official narrative. All of a sudden, a lot stinks. And then you've had the Zionists, you know, they started to pay tributes, you know, Ben Shapiro and co, and the rest of the so-called Zionist free speech advocates, you know. How can you ever have Zionist and free speech? How can you even say that? People suppress anyone speaking anything against them. But they try. They do try. I mean, we'll definitely confirm that fact. They try and they continue to try, and they try, you know, by pretending that, oh yeah, we're actually free speech, you know, we're good. Do not believe or buy anyone who calls you free speech or free will when they have 0.001 sympathy to these genocidal, depraved Zionists. Can't. Where's your judgment? You need to have a clear vision. That's where they try and manipulate. And again, fact of the matter is they're finding it difficult. That's why they went and bought TikTok. And users are already complaining. That's why they spend undisclosed amounts of money on campaigns, on bots. There are Israeli systems based in Israel by ex-security and intelligence members that sell packages that will bring you 30 to 40 to 50,000 live users on any platform that you can use as an army. And governments all across the world buy them, not alone the country they came out from. They look genuine. They will appear to be on YouTube for several years. And all of a sudden, they'll have one comment here and there. And they will be called James and Jane and Raj and Muhammad and Sarah. And they will be from every continent on earth. And the reality is that they are servers sitting there, hardware being activated, pretending to be supporting Israel. That's why if you go and visit some of these pathetic people or their social media, you will see some support. Oh, yes. That is what's called the electronic bots, the electronic Zioflies or bugs or something else. You name it. I know some of you won't really accept the comparison, but you can come up with a different name, no problem. Bujar difference: Israel and media exaggerate Israeli accomplishments versus Iran stays silent after destroying his opponent to ashes, leaving him alone in the mess. Yeah, they absolutely do exaggerate. But again, when you have the right vision, you remember what were your goals. Tell me, what were your goals? Israel's goals were to take down the establishment, to plant the son of the Shah, the Zionist son of the Shah there, who later unfollowed Netanyahu and Trump because they didn't continue with the war against Iran. Get rid of the nuclear program and their strategic missile capabilities. They achieved none of that. So the actions speak louder than words. That's why we were live streaming it, right? With the missiles landing on the child-killing entities' heads. They spoke way louder than the propaganda. And again, what did the Zionists say, whether in the form of mainstream media controlled by them or these stooges online, these mouthpieces here and there? They didn't show anything. They'll tell you, yeah, we neutralized them, we took them back several centuries ago. And then they'll come up with their own intelligence agencies, whether it's the CIA or the Israeli intelligence, telling you that no, actually, we didn't affect their capabilities. As a matter of fact, they might actually have nuclear weapons now without declaration. That's how bad it is. And they've done that. They've done that before. Many times, by the way. And that's what they did in Gaza as well. Didn't they destroy everything to cover up this huge military failure too on the ground? Who was talking about the Palestinian resistance in the past 2 years? Tell me. Who was actually, bringing everything as it is with it? Not many, right? And what did you see that in mainstream? No. Why? Because they want to cover up. They want to show it as if, it's a done deal. Khaled, do you think there's any chance that the Arab world will move together against Israel? So long as you have the current recipe of Arab rulers, that unfortunately is not going to be possible. Because many of the Arab establishments are a product of the Sykes-Picot Agreement between Britain and France, the early 20th century. These maps, these lines that are on the map of the Levant of North Africa, these straight lines, they never existed before as these lines, Everything was open. You'd go from one place to another. You had liberty, freedom of movement, and all of that. And part of the agreements that they had, and still do, is to recognize the legitimacy of the state of Israel. There were letters sent from some of these rulers to the British authorities at the time. We confirm the right of the Jewish people to have land in Palestine. How, in what recipe, or all of that, because, after the Balfour Declaration, the British Empire had the white papers, but they weren't effective, were they? To try and kind of reaffirm the right of the Palestinians to also live as if it's not going to be purely Jews. That didn't work because the plan was bigger than that. It was just ink on paper. They knew the score. So it's difficult with the current formula. In future, it could be possible. Listen, there were already certain moves happening that we really didn't expect to happen. But none of them reached the situation that is required to stop the aggression, right? And so long as that didn't happen, you need to understand that they are restrained. They are in chains. Israel didn't help by going and attacking Qatar. As a matter of fact, I think that was they made a lot of strategic mistakes, by the way. That one by far was the stupidest one. And they thought, they have this operation in their hand, not realizing that the security team of Hamas and Qatar at the time was more intelligent than them. The Hamas and Qatari security arrangement to get away and not fall into this trap, they proved Israel to be stupid. They were more intelligent. They fooled them. They pretended like they were going to a building, left all of their devices in one building, then moved to another building, And then Israel targeted the place with multiple strikes. And initially everyone was, hey, yeah, they killed everyone in Hamas. As in, their allies, of course. Everyone else was just disgusted by them attacking another Arab country. But look what happened after that. Look what happened. Look at the problems that they started to have also with the United States and tensions. And that eventually led to the ceasefire agreement, as fragile as it may be. And despite the fact that Israel is breaching and Israel is trying to restart, look at what happened just today. Yesterday. When they immediately said that that's it, we're not going to actually go in. So listen, the two major breaches, look at what happened. They had strikes and they said, we're going to stop the aid. 1 hour later, they said the ceasefire will resume and the aid will also resume. U-turn immediately, reportedly after the American administration told them, shut up. Then this time as well, they said we're going to go back to the yellow line, and reoccupy parts, take them away from Hamas. Now look at the stupidity and look at the chaos. They're confirming that they withdrew, which is a humiliating failure. Later on, what did they say? The ceasefire restarted, and we put this campaign on hold, and we're not going to go in back. Why? Again, reportedly, another move from the United States, of course, in coordination with the other countries who were playing part in the mediation. Turkey, Qatar, and Egypt too. And we'll wrap it up there, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in for another show. And thank you everyone who participated in the chat, everyone who sent supers as well. Michael, thank you. Darkness, Aini, Alan, Glenn, and F, thank you very much. In the meantime, everyone, enjoy the rest of your evening, day, or night, depending on where you are. I'll hopefully have another video for you later tonight and tomorrow as well. Tomorrow, again, it depends on the situation, either a live stream or, the usual videos. Stay blessed, guys. Take care, and I will see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone. Salam.